While eating, the prisoner casually glanced at the spoon in his hand, never imagining it would spark one of the most famous prison breaks in history. When a guard walked by without paying attention, he deliberately rubbed the spoon hard against the sole of his shoe. Then he calmly called the guard over, saying the spoon was dirty and asking for a clean one. The inmate beside him immediately caught on and asked to go along. The guard thought it sounded reasonable and agreed without a second thought. At the utensil station, the other inmate struck up a casual conversation with the guard to distract him. In just a split second, the man successfully swapped for a new spoon. What no one realized was that he actually took two, because he planned to use that spoon to dig through the wall and escape. A few days earlier, he had accidentally noticed a cockroach crawling in through the air vent. Creatures like that were rare in prison. If it could get in, it meant there had to be a way out. On top of that, the outer wall showed signs of wear from the sea breeze. And in that moment, Andy came up with a bold, unprecedented idea. He tested it with a nail clipper and was surprised to find the wall was relatively soft. The clipper, of course, had been swiped on his very first day during intake at the warden's office. He kept it hidden inside the Bible he carried with him. Since guards patrolled constantly, he had his neighbor keep watch.
Yeah. Start digging, so keep an eye out for the bulls. You see one coming, you start whistling.
Andy turned off the lights. He had to act within those brief windows of time to push forward his escape plan. The cell was cramped, forcing him to curl up as he carefully chipped away at the wall, making sure not to make a sound. Even the slightest noise would make him freeze. At one point, it turned out to be just someone dropping a book, but it still left him drenched in cold sweat. His hands were rubbed raw, but he didn't care. After digging for a while, Andy realized the nail clipper was exhausting to use and painfully slow. If he wanted out sooner, he needed better tools, and fast. Not long after, during a meal, he found exactly what he needed. With careful planning alongside his fellow inmates, he managed to get his hands on a metal spoon. He planned to turn it into a small shovel, but figuring out how to fuse it with the nail clipper became a major challenge. Luckily, Andy always had a way. He knew an older inmate who could get coins, so he traded 20 desserts for them. Through connections, he also got a small bundle of matches. Now everything was ready. Andy first snapped the spoon, then used the coins to grind against the file on the nail clipper, creating metal powder for bonding. Next, he fitted the spoon handle with the clipper lever and sprinkled the metal powder evenly over the joint. Before starting, he carefully checked his surroundings. Once he was sure it was safe, he got to work. Just like that, a sharp and sturdy mini shovel was born. The new tool worked beautifully, and he got so focused that he almost didn't notice the danger. A guard was approaching. Jim, the lookout next door, tried to warn him, but he was so nervous he couldn't whistle. In a flash of inspiration, he improvised another signal. That's when Andy snapped back to reality. Hearing footsteps getting closer, he quickly covered the hole with a box, dumped the debris into the toilet, and jumped back into bed. But in his panic, he dropped the spoon on the floor. The guard said he smelled something burning. Andy calmly replied that he smelled nothing. The guard figured it was just fatigue from working night shifts and left without much suspicion. Andy let out a long breath. That had been way too close. He told Jim to keep watch again. To avoid raising suspicion, he only dug a little each time, flushing the debris down the toilet or wrapping it in cloth and disposing of it during yard time. Once the hole was nearly complete, Andy tried to remove the metal grate, only to discover it was welded between two steel bars. No matter how hard he tried, it wouldn't budge. If only he had better tools. As luck would have it, he was assigned to the wood shop that day. There, he made a wooden wedge reinforced with metal. With that, the great problem could finally be solved. But as he left the workshop, the metal detector went off.
Hold it! I made it for a close peg.
What no one realized was that he had another hidden in his shoe sole. Back in his cell, he wedged it into the welded joint between the grate and the bars. Then, bracing himself, he kicked hard, again and again, until the grate finally came loose. He peeked inside and confirmed what he'd hoped. The passage connected to a rooftop vent. Just like he'd imagined, he could climb out through the duct. Next, he handed the tools to 3 other inmates so they could dig their own way out. Everyone knew one thing. Inside prison, sticking together mattered more than going solo. They worked as a team, watching out for each other, signaling at the first sign of trouble. Even with the hole finished, it couldn't be left exposed. If a guard saw it, they'd be done. So they came up with a plan to create a perfect cover. One inmate working in the library brought back paper. Another requested paint and brushes under the excuse of taking up art. Someone else got hair that matched Andy's exactly. Another, working in the clothing shop, secured raincoats to use as flotation devices, since the prison sat on an island. With all materials gathered, they mixed cement dust with water to create adhesive, blending it with soaked paper. copper. They formed a hard composite panel and painted it to perfectly match the wall. Placed over the hole, it was nearly impossible to spot. Then they molded a fake head out of pulp. Once it dried, they painted it with skin tones and added hair. Up close, it looked rough, but in dim light, it was completely convincing. Everything was ready. Andy climbed out through the hole to scout the escape route in advance. He climbed up the duct, unaware that a guard was on patrol. His lookout heard the noise and quickly signaled him. The guard glanced into Andy's cell, assumed he was fast asleep, and moved on. The fake head had done its job. Meanwhile, Andy reached a platform and eventually found the vent opening, but it was blocked by several steel bars. He tried jumping to reach it, but couldn't quite make it. At the same time, the guard began to grow suspicious and turned back.
Morris go to sleep early tonight?
Yeah. Wasn't feeling well.
He was asleep pretty soundly. He hasn't moved.
Then, by chance, his baton fell to the ground. As he bent to pick it up, he noticed Andy's hair looked off. Curious, he reached out to touch it, and then...
Yeah, what's up?
The next day at lunch, the group discussed their progress. Everything was going smoothly so far. The only issue was the vent. Those bars made it impossible to climb up alone. That night, they went back through the duct to the vent and stashed the raincoats nearby. With help, Andy grabbed onto the bars and inspected them. The top was secured with large rivets, and the bars were too tough for their current tools. When Andy dropped back down, he noticed a power outlet. If they had a drill, this problem would be solved instantly. John joked there wasn't exactly a hardware store nearby, but Andy, with an IQ over 130, already had an idea. At a concert in the hall, he spotted an old electric fan in the corner, and inspiration struck. He asked another inmate if he could get wires and a drill bit. The man agreed, on the condition that Andy gave up his desserts. After the concert, while packing up, Andy quietly slipped the fan into an instrument case. Jim was stunned. If they got caught with something that big, they'd be dead. Just as Andy reached the door, a guard demanded to inspect the case. But Andy stayed calm, even lifting the case himself and inviting the search. The guard noticed Jim looking nervous and chose to inspect him instead, letting Andy walk free. That moment proved just how strong Andy's nerves really were. That night, he assembled the makeshift drill using the wire and parts. John removed a section of pipe, but accidentally made noise. From then on, they had to be even more careful. Andy braced himself on the grate, pried off the bars, climbed to the vent, and used the drill. Thankfully, it wasn't loud enough to alert the guards below. Within minutes, the rivets were drilled through. Meanwhile, the others worked on life vests and a raft. Everything was ready. They just needed the right moment. They had also studied the guards' patrol patterns. Between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. was the weakest window. They planned the escape for Wednesday night. Jim was nervous about getting caught, but Andy reassured him. Still, things didn't go smoothly. Trouble kept piling up. The guards noticed Andy talking with Jim late into the night. To reduce risk, the warden scheduled Andy for transfer to another cell on Wednesday morning. With no choice, they moved the escape up to Tuesday night. The day before, the warden suddenly inspected the cells. Andy thought they'd been exposed. The guard searched his mattress with a metal detector, but found nothing. Then the warden examined the room closely and knocked over the instrument case, revealing the fake wall panel. Andy's heart dropped, but in the next second, the warden opened the case instead. The fake panel was just too convincing. He didn't notice a thing. Before leaving, the warden smugly told Andy he'd die in prison. Andy was angry, but it didn't matter anymore. Before the night, he said goodbye to a friend who knew about the plan but chose not to join, only to support him quietly. Finally, at 10 p.m., the escape began, but Jim, overwhelmed with fear, stayed behind, paralyzed by the thought of getting caught and executed. When guards checked the cells, they thought all three were asleep, fooled by the fake heads. Seeing Jim lying there in tears, the guards didn't think twice. Meanwhile, the other three reached the platform. Andy called for Jim, but got no response. With no time to wait, they moved on. They climbed out through the vent and sent John up first. When the cover fell, it alerted the guard tower, but after scanning the area and seeing nothing, the guard assumed it was just a seagull. Once the spotlight went off, John climbed out and signaled it was clear. They crouched low and moved quickly across the rooftop to a hidden corner. Andy glanced back, but Jim never showed. They kept going, climbing down pipes along the building. Back in the cell, Jim finally made up his mind, but it was too late. Alone, he couldn't reach the vent. Regret hit him hard. Everyone knows. Hesitation costs you everything. Meanwhile, the three reached the outer fence. Freedom was right ahead. Adrenaline surged as they climbed at incredible speed. Soon, they were outside the prison walls. They stuck to the shadows, avoiding light as they ran. After crossing a small wooded area just as they neared the shore, Andy suddenly froze. After a tense few minutes, he cautiously took the lead again. They crossed the road, went down a slope, and finally reached the water. Without stopping, they inflated the raft with everything they had. Their faces turned red, nearly suffocating, but finally it filled. They put on the life vests and began paddling the raft toward the distant shore. The freezing, bone-chilling seawater couldn't extinguish their determination to pursue freedom, and the prison cells of Alcatraz couldn't contain their longing for liberty. The next morning, as all the inmates were up, washing up and starting their day, the guards discovered that Andy's cell showed no activity at all.
God damn it, Morris, I said
Jesus Christ!
His friend smiled with relief. Finally, someone had made it out of this prison. As for whether the three of them successfully made it to shore, that remains unknown. Although the warden later deployed helicopters, ground forces, and even divers to carry out a full-scale search operation, no one was found alive, and no bodies were ever recovered. The three men had seemingly vanished without a trace, as if they had disappeared from the world entirely. To protect his position, the warden falsely reported to the outside world that all three had died.